Iwai, after 20 years of Kamen Rider and 20 copyright strikes, we reach the end of the Heisei Era. And the person to tell Kamen Rider Gio's story is Marcosatsu. Weird dream. Let's backtrack a bit. Why celebrate only the Heisei Era and not Kamen Rider as a whole? For one, this new rider would be the 38th series, and that's not a round number. But more seriously, Shinichiro Shirakura was put in charge of this project, and according to him, he wanted to focus on Heisei Rider because it was celebrating its 20th anniversary. Although, he also brought up how Kamen Rider Build's toy sales were great, but the viewership ratings weren't. Isn't it ironic how at least in the English-speaking fandom, Build is considered to be one of the best in the franchise? Though of course what matters to Bandai and Toei more is money. So according to Shirakura, Kamen Rider Decade received a 40% increase in viewership ratings due to having the theme of Legend Riders. So why not do it again? Actually, Shirakura didn't want to incorporate Legend Riders in the first place, until co-producer Naomi Takabe basically asked, why not? Huh, why not? That almost sounds like it could be the main thesis for this video. Why not? Is that really the attitude Toei should be taking for such a big celebration? It's not only a big anniversary of Kamen Rider as a whole, but it's about to be the literal end of an era. We were about to enter the third era of Kamen Rider, so why not go all out? Well, believe it or not, there actually is an answer. To many, the final rider of the Heisei Era did not seem like it was enough for those quote-unquote true fans. But as I said, Toei did have an answer. And I'm actually getting ahead of myself. Let's time travel back to when Kamen Rider Build was nearing its end. And we got this. Our first official tease for the final Heisei Rider. And it's a whole lot of nothing. At least on the surface. The silhouette is extremely plain, even for just being a dark figure. However, this might be on purpose, as Kamen Rider Decade's first ever tease was similar. You can even notice the pink around the 2018 teaser, possibly as a parallel to Decade. Though taking a closer look at the 2018 Rider teaser, we can see numbers in the background. Could this mean the Rider would be more technological? Maybe the numbers could have something to do with time. What's the large circle on the left? The numbers, Mason, what do they mean? So many questions, naturally. This teaser wasn't giving us much to go off of, and more surprising is that we didn't get a name either, until May 8th, 2018. Kamen Rider Gio. That's how his katakana reads, Gio, and as we'll hear later, it's pronounced that way too. If it was pronounced with a Z, then we'd have this katakana and not G. So, what could this mean? Gio. Well, looking through the quote tweets, a lot of English speakers keep making the same Power Rangers jokes, so let's ignore that side for now. Reading some possible kanji and even looking back at past shows, Gio could translate to Time King, numbers, time. Now for our next teaser. Interesting. Maybe the earlier tease wasn't too far off. At least everything below the head looks quite similar, and those antennas, plus those phallic fingers and the digital numbers across the Heisei Riders, those were our next clues. He's really based on time, like a clock. But more importantly, this will be a celebration of the Heisei Era, right? Some rumors went around saying that Gio's face would be based on a clock and would transform into past riders based on where his clock hands are pointing. For one, that sounds really creative, in a way better than what we already got. And second, could this be like Kamen Rider Decade? Say a second version? Well, we wouldn't have to wait long for more answers to come. Our next teaser showed us, what the heck is that? I mean, I kinda hate the colors and the helmet. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a clock. It does have clock hands. And this isn't made up, though it's kinda funny our first look of the new rider came from an arcade machine. Okay, personal opinion aside, this is Kamen Rider Gio. We'll just wait on an official look and... What do you mean the secondary rider also got leaked? These just kept coming, reminding me a lot of when Build's rumors came out. Anyway, we got another look at Gio, as well as a secondary rider named Kamen Rider Gates. But we got bigger things to look at. Check out those Legend Rider forms in the back. These Geo riders aren't going to transform fully into past riders like Decade. Instead, they're getting forms based on them. Heisei really came a long way, huh? What I found interesting is that these forms were from the immediate reverse order of past seasons: Build, Exate, Ghost, and Drive, rather than showing off anything from Heisei Phase 1. The suits just look so bad, to me at least. Anyway, that was the last of it for a while, and then we got our first official trailer. Starting with 2000's Kamen Rider Kuga, we go through the years into 2018's Kamen Rider Gio, with the Kamen kanji and Raida's katakana stylized into the helmet. Here we have a young boy who wants to be king, then he comes across a gray gadget, followed by a robot, a golden rider, and Kamen Rider Build? Fantastic. However, to be incredibly honest, the show itself wasn't hyping me up, but rather the hype itself for this celebration. I've been working on History of Kamen Rider for literal years, starting with the Heisei Era, and now we're reaching the end of it, so this became a little more personal. It's not just a love for Kamen Rider, it's a love for what I do. And with that, we should get the party started. We begin in the year 2068, where statues of past riders commemorate Tokiwa Sogo's first transformation. However, this is not a good thing, as a golden Kamen Rider has taken over, so it's up to some survivors to stop this future from happening. And it all starts with a young boy who wants to become a king. Same. The young boy is Tokiwa Sogo, and he finds a strange gray watch of some kind. Luckily, his uncle runs a clock shop. I won't be bringing up the uncle too often, but he's the best character in the show. Speaking of the best character in the show, while out, Sogo comes across a strange man in a hoodie, saying that today is a special day, but Sogo must be careful of a red robot. Then Sogo runs into a red robot. A second gray robot rescues Sogo, piloted by a young woman named Tsukuyomi. She explains that in the year 2068, Sogo becomes Oma Gio and takes over the world as a demon king. So a rebel named Gates is trying to stop this apocalyptic future. Did that T-Rex just make an elephant noise? Tsukuyomi and Sogo continue to jump to different time periods to escape Gates, though Sogo seems happy to become a king regardless. A fight between spectators ensues, and Sogo is a bit abhorrent to it, saying he's not a fan of fighting, which makes Tsukuyomi question if this young man could really be the evil rider of the future. Gates, now transformed, arrives so Sogo and Tsukuyomi escape once again, though this time into the year 2017, more specifically, November 30th, 2017. Coincidentally, Sogo runs into a couple of schmucks at a cafe, and one of them, Sento Kiryu, is interested in Sogo's gray watch. Then they get knocked out by Tsukuyomi's Phase Watch gun thing, saying they shouldn't be messing with the timeline. The two go back to 2018 in the clock shop, where Sogo's uncle gives some advice after seeing Sogo a bit down and confused on what to do. We can turn the hands on the clock back all we want, but it'll still continue forward. What a great uncle. From here, Sogo runs into a monster who looks a lot like Kamen Rider Build. Then Tsukuyomi arrives telling Sogo not to transform. Then the weird hoodie guy tells Sogo to accept his fate to be king. It feels like absolute chaos out of nowhere, until Sogo realizes he can still shape his future. His current self is not fated to be a demon king. He'll be the best king alive. With that, his gray watch transforms, and the hooded man presents him with the Jiku driver. And now, it's time. That's our king of time, Kamen Rider Gio. He fights off the Build monster, but Gates arrives to defeat Sogo himself. Going into episode 2, Tsukuyomi lets Sogo escape and we have the hooded man officially introduce himself. He's named Waz, and he wants Sogo to continue the path of becoming king, though his obstacles will be the Time Jackers, who create another riders by alternating history. He says another riders can only be beaten by the power of the original riders, hence the ride watches. Sogo goes off to Cafe Nashita, where Sento and Banjo still live, except for a big change. The refrigerator is just a normal refrigerator. Luckily, Gates finishes off the another build temporarily, causing Sento and Banjo to regain their memories, giving Sogo ride watches left in their pockets. We travel back to 2017 to defeat another build for good, with a really cool lineup of our riders, and Sogo using the build ride watch. The monster is defeated and Tsukuyomi and Gates move into the watch shop in order to keep a closer eye on Sogo. And pause. Okay, I know that was a lot, so let's simplify this premise. Gates and Tsukuyomi travel from the year 2068 to stop Sogo from becoming the Demon King, Omagio. Also on their path is a third party named Waz, who is on Sogo's side for unknown reasons. A group who stands in their way are the Timejackers, Oda and Wool. These two offer deals to civilians by changing their timelines and turning them into another riders. For another build, Wool stopped a young man who was about to get run over by a car, in exchange for him transforming into a monster. Through time shenanigans, our heroes turn the young man back to normal and change his timeline for the better. A lot of the Another Rider stories are like this, taking a deal to change someone's timeline, then Soga and friends defeating them with better consequences. Although, there is one major negative that I'll have to put a pin in for later, since I'm gonna be foreshadowing to a very long negative section later on. Oh, you want to know now? Let's see what the show says. Alright, that's quite the funny fan translation. As if Toei would be that self-aware for their anniversary show. Right? No, wait, that basically is the translation. We shouldn't be asking questions? No need to look that deep into the show? But what about canon and timelines and all these questions and the confusion and... Oh man. Thank goodness then. I thought I'd have to make a 2-hour-long video about this weird show. Like, have you seen how much work I put into the Gaim and X8 videos? That puts a whole lot off my shoulders. If we're not taking this seriously, then I'll at least give the gist of each 2-part arc. Our first episodes, of course, introduces to Gio while also being a tribute to Build. It may have seemed like it was a lot to take in, especially when this is also being respectful to Build, but I think it was done very well. I've been summarizing the basic plot in a couple of sentences. You know, a couple of people from the future go to our present to stop Sogo from becoming evil, then time travel shenanigans are in there. It's not that complicated to understand, to me at least, so there was enough room for the Build characters and our main cast. In fact, I don't think there's any sacrifice here. We know the basicness of Sogo and friends, new viewers can get the gist of Sento and Banjo, the story is simple enough to grasp. It's also been great so far. If these 2 first episodes were an indicator of things to come, then I have very high hopes. Following our introductory arc is episode 3, Dr. Gamer 2018. Sogo's at school when... Wait, Sogo's in school? I know his whole thing is being a high school student, but I wasn't expecting to actually have episodes in the school. Anyway, Sogo's being watched by Gates and Tsukuyomi, so he wants some privacy, leading him to find a classmate who tells him about an unbeatable game. A fight with another X8 leads our heroes to find the genius Gamer M, in hopes of beating this unbeatable game, since Sogo says he himself is bad at video games. Fast forward a bit, and Sogo discovers a secret Konami code that transports him into a warehouse. He defeats another X8, then the genius Gamer M steps out, ready for a fight. Oda recreates another X8, rewriting history. With that, Team Gio travel back to 2016, seeing more cameos with Kamen Rider Brave, Hiro Kagami, and Sogo learns about the true power of friendship, gaining the X8 Ride Watch. The day is saved, and next we see a student excited to attend Amanagawa High School. Oh, were you expecting a certain high schooler ready to befriend everyone? Let's see how this plays out. A man named Schwartz makes an appearance. He's the Timejackers' leader, and... wait, why wasn't he just introduced in episode 1? So, Team Gio are told of students who have gone missing. Tsukuyomi specifically brings up how she met a teacher with a pompadour. So our heroes disguise themselves to go to Amanagawa High School, where they do find one of the missing girls, but she's rescued by another Fourze. Despite the rescue, Sogo fights another Fourze, leaving a couple of other students in awe. Hey wait, those are the students from the Fourze movie. Okay, Toei's gotta be teasing us for a big reveal. They even take Sogo and friends to the Kamen Rider Club, where they meet Mr. Osugi. Oh man, I miss that guy. Just like Sento in the previous arc, Mr. Osugi gives Sogo the Fourze Ride Watch. This is gonna be so great, I can already tell. With that Ride Watch in hand, Team Geo go back to 2011 to stop another Fourze, but in the distance lurks a man, leading up to all these cameos to this point. We finally get to meet Takumi Inui from Faiz? And Kusaka Masato also from Faiz? Come on, don't tell me you're expecting Gentaro to appear in the Fourze tribute, right? Of course not, you silly goose. Sota Fukushi costs a lot of money, and he's a very busy man. Of course he couldn't come back for a small appearance. I'd be just as surprised if Gaim or Deno's main characters appeared in the show itself too. This may be Kamen Rider's anniversary, but we do have logistics and money to make. So yeah, this two-parter is a combination tribute to both Fourze and Faiz. And you know what? That's actually a really cool idea. From a production standpoint, having other characters cross over in case Toei couldn't get certain actors is good, plus the stories could work off each other. Takumi in his own show is a loner and took time to get people to call his friends, so mix that with Fourze whose whole point is friendship, and you get a good juxtaposed relationship. So how does Toei mess this one up? I don't think they do mess this up. Yeah, I really like this arc. The combination of both Fourze's and Faiza's character motifs make for some interesting growth with our main cast. Gage parallels Takumi and Kusaka in some ways, while Sogo questions his own friendship with these time travelers. That's not even to mention the Civilian of the Week story, which I also think is absolutely fantastic. I kinda wish we didn't have 3 separate storylines to follow, but it still works giving each character resolution. I guess the only thing I don't like is Fourze's representation being 2 students from the side content, but I also see why they did this. Actor scheduling can be tough, plus there's timeline placement for the story and a whole lot of other details. Though I do think Mr. Osugi is great if no one else. I know despite my very obvious sarcasm, I've actually been really positive so far. And you know when I say that the next part isn't going to be as positive, so who do we have next? Please. Oh, we can skip this one, right? Okay, let's see. Civilian of the Week story, Waz is being a silly guy, nothing's happening. Okay, episode 7, Nito Kosuke is here, he is the wizard representation, the end. Okay, I was initially joking, but I think we really can skip this one. I'll get back to this arc in a general sense, but that's really all I got for now. I don't think I can bring anything up here. Besides, the next couple of episodes are what I know a lot of people want me to bring up instead. We go into episode 9 with a history lesson as Team Gio talk about Oda Nobunaga, who is in a way a demon king, at least according to Gates. Sogo opposes this view, wanting to be a kind king. Now for our main setup. A TV broadcasts Dan Foundation declaring their independence. Dan Kuroto King now rules his own nation. Dan Kuroto? Although we see a man with a red feather pin held hostage. Soga and friends check out Dan Kuroto King's castle, when Kuroto transforms into another O's? This is another one of those writer mixes, this time combining Dan Kuroto from Ex-Aid with Eiji and Hina from O's. This arc is about the O's reps being against Kuroto's kingly ways, with Team Gio in there somewhere. Admittedly, I don't think Ex-Aid and O's go together all that well, but they at least did try to have some thematic connections, specifically with Kuroto's desire for kinghood paralleling Eiji's lack of desire. Kuroto is also such a random choice, and the reason for that is because the director and writer both figured a character like Dan Kuroto would make for a good king. They knew of his popularity, so they were also conscious to not have him overshadow the other half of this with O's. A cute fun fact is that since Eiji's clothes are so iconic with how colorful and abnormal they are, it was tough for production to give Eiji a suit that didn't stand out, so his actor suggested wearing a red feather to symbolize Ankh. To wrap up our themes, Sogo's uncle says how he admired Oda Nobunaga for uniting the nation. He may have been called a Demon King, but people followed him for a reason, and there's usually more than one perspective. And so, Dan Kuroto King is defeated with the power of friendship, leading us to episode 11. I also want to make a very quick mention here. A lot of my outtakes had me saying Dan Kuro King. I don't know, it just stuck with me. I never even heard about that before I watched this. Why do I keep wanting to call him Dan Kuro King? That sounds so weird. No, it's Dan Kuroto King, not Dan Kuro King. Dan Kuroto King. Dan Kuroto! Oh, we can skip this one. Just kidding. We start with Sogo fighting another Gaim by using the Gaim Ride Watch and... did we actually skip something? It feels like I skipped a whole episode. Sogo meets with Kota Kazuraba in the pocket dimension. Okay, it does feel like we skipped a whole lot of exposition, but this is really how the episode starts. It sets up things that are clearly going off course, as Kota berates Sogo for not believing in Gates, giving us the main idea for this arc. The Timejackers try to convince Gates that he doesn't need Sogo, and Waz tells Sogo that Gates should mean nothing to him. Meanwhile, another Gaim is born after a member of Team Baron was kicked out of the dance group. Our heroes investigate, and another Gio appears. Not like the monster called another Gio, but a literal second Sogo appears. The two Sogos meet, and even Waz is at a loss for words. The second Sogo is from the future, 3 days in the future to be exact. Future Sogo says God told him to save Gates, which creates an unwritten future, and this makes Waz so upset he considers helping out Schwartz and the Timejackers. Yeah, seriously. Some shenanigans later, and the two Sogos converge to fight another Gaim, saving the day. I thought for sure this would have been where Sogo gets the power-up. Anyway, it might feel like Gaim isn't here too much, but I think it's more or less the same amount as any other cameo. Like how Takumi and Kusaka actually weren't in their own arcs all that much, same with Nito and Eiji. Though it feels less so here because Gakusano is a very expensive and busy person, but we also get Kaito Kuman as another Gaim rep. I didn't even bring him up, though that's because we actually had some story for Sogo and Gates here. At least they were the A-plot for previous arcs, even if it usually intertwined with the Civilian of the Week. Here we focus on them a lot more, and yeah, I did enjoy this arc because of it. Like anyone else, I'd have loved to see more Gaim, but as a story for the writers whose season this is named after, it's not bad. I liked it. Well, that was strange. That was stranger. Waz decides to actually support the Timejackers and brings up a rather capricious man, a destroyer that can help with defeating Sogo. Meanwhile, with Sogo, he gets kidnapped by Tenkuji Takeru, who died on his 18th birthday and was revived by gathering the historic... Oh hey, this is that Ryusoulger and Kamen Rider crossover I've heard so much about. Speaking of hearing, Oda talks to a mysterious man who seems to have gotten the gist of what she's saying. During a fight with another ghost, Kamen Rider Agito appears, and he has other tricks up his sleeves. Kamen Rider Hibiki. He easily beats Sogo, but leaves as this was just a test. This man is Tsukasa Kadoya, a passing through Kamen Rider, and the destroyer of worlds. Going into episode 14, Sogo is out of commission for a bit, so Gates goes back to 2015 to fight another ghost, but they both have a visitor. During our battle between three ghosts, Tsukasa throws a special ride watch to Gates. Now, you might be wondering why he would do that to his own enemies, and the answer is... it's all Decade's fault. Oh look, it's Makoto. Nice. The battle escalates for... reasons, and Sogo joins in, using a new gift from Gates. Wow, that's a catchy jingle. Once all that's done, Sogo goes back to his own body and starts getting hungry since ghosts can't eat dinner. They all go back to the clock shop when they see Tsukasa. He properly introduces himself and says he's going to destroy the world. Funnily enough, I've been bringing up a lot how despite having to intertwine past writers, the Civilian of the Week, and Gio's own characters, the overall package is good. Moments between all kinds of characters have been great, and the show is at its best when it balances out interactions. Gio characters with past writers, civilians of the week, past writers with the civilians. I think that's what really grabs me about this season in particular. Moments that make me forget how jumbled everything else is. Because when we get to episode 15 and 16, we focus purely on Gio's story without any past writers or civilians of the week. For better and for worse. Also not counting Tsukasa, because he's part of the main cast now. Tsukuyomi asks Sogo why he wants to be king, and Sogo simply says he's always dreamed of being one. Quite literally, he's dreamt of becoming a king. Our main plot point comes in when one of Omagio's retainers arrives from the future to foretell of Sogo's ambitions, and how the Timejackers are changing their plans to kill Sogo directly. Eventually, Sogo ends up in front of an untransformed Omagio, played by Seiji Takaiwa in the shadows. Everything Sogo has done has led up to a certain point in time, including the moments where Sogo was benevolent. But something happened to change history, leading to the birth of the Demon King. Omagio is just as strong as we saw before, and Sogo has no way of fighting him, aside from throwing away his driver. Episode 16. Sogo starts to lose the drive of becoming king. He doesn't want to see Gates or Tsukuyomi again, and doesn't want to go down an evil path. His uncle says that Sogo's passion will lead him to the right steps. So with his newfound resolve, Sogo transforms into forms he already has. I know, a power-up isn't needed to show growth, but it would have been cool. I'll at least admit that this does show that it's the end of the season arc. Team Gio has their own focus episodes to progress the story and characters. Episodes 1 through 16 is the arc called Rider Time, the Demon King of the Future. And it's okay. That's not my rating for the overall show, just this arc. And again, as super ironic as it sounds, it's okay. I already mentioned how I like the moments between characters. Well, I mentioned it more than once because I really did like those moments. Though to get a bit deeper, that was more of a general feeling because 100% honestly, I don't remember super specific moments. I know, that is terrible of me, I know. But even looking back at my notes, I wrote, BL moment with Gates and Sogo. What moment was that exactly? I don't remember. My biggest concern here is arguably the most important piece of the story. Aside from moments, what else was there? I've talked a lot about Civilians of the Week in my X8 video, where I said I kinda just didn't care. But I also said in my Fies video that moments can actually carry shows quite a lot. After all, videos about memes and transformation sequences can get millions of views on YouTube without needing those connecting pieces. I know that's a terrible example, but give me a second. And when we look at the middle ground with the balance, I'd say we get something like Den-O, where the connecting pieces are very rewarding to watch while also giving us these cool moments to build up for. The climax may not be explosive, but they're memorable, and the characters are always worth watching. So, combine my thoughts about Den-O, Fies, and X8, connecting it all and circling it back to Gio, I kinda just don't care about the in-between stories. And don't get me wrong, I like the anniversary elements. It's nice to see past writers. It's great seeing Tsukasa playing a bigger part than expected. But this is Kamen Rider Gio. I should care about Kamen Rider Gio. And yet, I can give it a pass for now. Since this is only the first arc, we have our baseline for the characters, we have the toys to sell in time for the holidays, and most importantly, we have a movie.
1.5 はネーミングの謎。
Hey, this isn't a movie. Although it is nice to learn how the writers and characters got their names. Another fun fact is that Gio could mean Time King, but it's also an anagram for Oji, meaning prince, as well as the number 20.
同じライダーの力は同じ時間には共存できない。
Right. Okay, so this is Kamen Rider Geo Supplemental Plan, aired in between episodes 1 through 16, bringing in guest actors as he talk fun facts about the show.
王様を擁立しようとしてるの。王様を決める戦いが始まるから。
That sure would have been nice to have been spelled out for us in the show. I mean, it was kind of, sort of. Then there's this part.
東映ごと潰した方が早い気がする。ね。おお。万歳。揃ってブリッジに出てたからまあいいだろう。
That's why certain actors didn't return.
これもすべて白倉 P ってやつの仕業なんだ。
Complete.
Look, man, this was just a mini-series made for fun. Absolutely not necessary. It's probably not even canon considering all the fourth wall breaks. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe it could be canon. I know a lot of you probably wanted me to go over this even more, but really, what else can I really show here besides some clips? And besides, they're really short. You could easily just watch this on your own. It's here if you're interested. It has some good jokes. It's an okay time. I really like this.
ピンクじゃないマゼンタだ。
Yeah, I know, everybody says it.
マゼンタ。
まず
マゼンタ。
Okay, detour over. Let's get into our final movie of the Heisei Era. In 2018, we see Tokyo Asogo pass its exam with an A. He starts getting chased by a robot that he doesn't recognize, and we learn that something has been messing with time and space. Then, another Den-O appears, alongside another double. Leading them is a timejacker named Tid, who's going to destroy the Heisei Riders, starting with Kuga. Sogo regains his memories, while two other heroes get themselves involved in this new timeline. This is Heisei Generations Forever. Yeah, Heisei Generations Final apparently wasn't the final one. There actually is an explanation for the title though. Producer Shirokota said the word final was literal, in that it was the final Kamen Rider movie released in the spring. And so, to celebrate 20 years of Heisei Kamen Rider, we have the truly last film for the Heisei Era, since this was released in the winter of December 2018. And what a way to end it. Its slogan is already very powerful. An era ends. Everything begins. To those who loved Kamen Rider, do they live on in your memories? The movie's plot takes this quite literally, since Tid says that this is a world where Kamen Riders shouldn't exist, and this boy named Shingo shouldn't be here either. Team Build protects Shingo, while Team Geo catches the eye of a schoolboy named Ataru, who somehow has the power to draw in riders. Shingo also loves Kuga. Huh, I thought he'd be too young to enjoy a show that old. Not that kids don't watch older shows, but... Oh look, it's the ramen guy from Kamen Rider Double! He gives Sogo the double ride watch because Shotaro told him to. There's your double representative, everybody. Eventually, both rider teams cross paths and try to exchange information, since their main leads to whatever is happening here are Shingo and Ataru. Our heroes go to Ataru's house, which Shingo recognizes. They enter and see a collection of Kamen Rider toys. In this world, Kamen Riders are fiction. Shingo is Ataru's brother who went missing years ago, creating despair within Ataru, but he found hope in Kamen Riders. The show was an escape for him. So one day, Ataru was granted a wish from an Imogen, causing the time and space distortion event now, and turning Ataru into another Den-O. Sogo is distraught now knowing his reality is fiction, but Sogo is okay with this, because he shouldn't exist in the first place. Through time travel shenanigans and Woz using the Gaia library for a reason I'll explain later, we find out that Shingo went missing because he was taken to the year 2018, which is why he's here now. Meanwhile, Tid finds the ruins where Kuga's coffin was excavated, finding Riku, the original Kuga. There's your Kuga representative, everybody. Tid transforms into another Kuga, and the timeline starts to distort even further, to the point that Team Geo can't follow wherever Tid goes. Although, Geo isn't the only time traveler. The Denliner appears, along with a special guest. Yeah, there's your Den-O representative. As you can tell, it took so much to get everything together for this movie. The main writer for Gio was asked to write Heigen Forever, and of course Shirakura as producer. One thing I have to bring up here is Shirakura's, let's say, way of working behind the scenes. I've brought him up countless times before, and there's always at least one person who chimes in to say that he's a terrible producer and doesn't understand the shows, when I usually say the opposite. He's quoted to have said modern Kamen Rider isn't interesting. He didn't believe early Heisei Era heroes to understand the meaning of justice, and probably the most jarring thing to hear is that this movie isn't canon. Yup, Sogo and Sento's adventures through this world, the emotion felt in Shingo's story, the return of Ryotaro. It's not canon. Shirakura himself said that this isn't even a parallel world, it's just a completely separate thing. However, that doesn't mean this never happened. I mean, you can clearly see it on screen, the actors are right there, the story is still told. This is a side I wanted to bring up from comments I've seen online. Those who ask if it's worth skipping shows and movies if they're non-canon. One of the most important questions to ask when we reach the end of Gio. And trust me, I will bring it up one more time. Well, let's combine two of these theses I put together. At first, a question was asked. Why not? And the second thesis comes from Heigen Forever. The story is fiction, but the emotions are real. Maybe you didn't enjoy certain Kamen Rider shows. I know I have my least favorites, but what's important is that someone out there, whether they're an adult or a child watching for the first time, that they enjoyed the show. To them, the emotions and memories made through these shows are what matter the most. And even though we saw Ryotaro again, the emotions aren't done, and you know what's coming. Once our scene with the Den-O crew is over, we still have one more thing to take care of. It's time to take down Tid, but how's that possible when the rest of the Kamen Riders aren't real? To the people of this world, and ours, the Kamen Riders are real, those who grew up with it. Those who learn to love the heroes.
Okay, start your engine!
Those that believe in hope. It's perfect. I know how perfect this moment is. You know how perfect this moment is. We love Kamen Rider. Wow, what an okay movie! I know, that was probably an extreme pace breaker, though we should talk about the actual film. This follows first arc Gio's formula practically down to a T, but with a new time jacker and a neat twist for the setup. Unfortunately, I don't have much else to add that I already didn't say before. The story is good, and the in-between parts I just kinda don't care about. But the build-up to the best moments are incredible. I say that quite a lot for these kinds of movies, like Superhero Tyson and other crossovers. Let's backtrack here a bit. To go deeper in the non-canon section, Shirakura was the one who said it was non-canon, and as far as I can find, no one else made a statement about it, so his word is all I can go by. This non-canon explanation parallels what he said later in that even though certain elements from this movie appear in the show, the way things happen was different here and what happened off-screen. It's also the explanation for why other things happen, such as Waz being able to access the Gaia library. I've also read that it's just an artsy way to explain how Waz got this information needed and isn't the literal Gaia library, and I don't remember where I read that and I couldn't find the source, so I don't know, I'm just gonna blame Decade and Gio. If it helps, the build characters we see here are meant to be the New World versions, meaning it's the same Sento and Banjo from the show, which yeah, that's great, but that also adds even more questions, but oh my gosh, I'm just gonna digress here. A funny thing to learn is that over 10 drafts were written to get the movie we ultimately got. I say it's funny because this almost seems like a very immediate idea for an anniversary movie, you know, being meta and all that. Even though Kamen Riders being fiction was planned from the start, the whole meta aspect wasn't initially part of it, at least when bringing up the Heisei Era element. This is gonna be quite a bit to explain, so please bear with me. The Showa and Heisei Era grouping began as a fan-made naming scheme, until it just stuck and Toei decided to do the same. It's kinda why Super Sentai doesn't take the grouping as seriously. So with that in mind, Shirokura felt that it had to be part of the meta-narrative, comparing it to the Ultraman Dyna and Gaia movie. I've never seen that, so you're gonna have to take his word for it too.
嘘だろどうしてみんな僕がガイアだって知ってるんだでは万引きしちゃダメだぞガイア
I've also been saying that this is another world rather than our world, because this is meant to be a world similar to ours, but isn't actually ours. I know that's a lot to wrap your head around, but I did warn you to bear with me. Okay, so we should finally bring up the elephant in the room. This is a celebration of Heisei Rider, so we should have some faces in the front. Ryotoro's return is a big deal, and Den-O makes a lot of sense for story reasons, as well as just being really popular in Japan. We've also been getting a lot of another double and another Kuga, so no returning actors for them? It's extremely awkward that there's such big parts of Kamen Rider as a whole, including in this movie's story, but we don't really get anything else for them. Yeah, the ramen noodle guy is here, but do any of you even know what episode he's from? Any general details? That's a trick question, cause he was only in Double's Hyper Battle video and the O's Den-O movie for a couple seconds. And I guess a fun fact, he was Double's assistant line producer. That's literally all I got. I don't even think he has a name. Oh, I was right, he doesn't have a name, he's just Fuminmasa, so what? Okay, that's all I got. Like, not even one of Double's confidants? The Santa guy, Watcher Man, any of the ladies? A lot of Double actors actually were willing to return, but those who were asked ended up being really busy and couldn't make it into Toei's scheduling. And to make things even more awkward, we don't even get a user for another Double in the movie. He doesn't untransform. Producer Shirokura says there was a user in one of their earlier drafts, but was scrapped for time. He also said that another Double's user was a former Kamen Rider fan. Wow, that would have been kinda nice, and it wasn't even included in the director's cut? So, Kuga, huh? Yeah, you know, the biggest face for Heisei Phase 1, the big return of Kamen Rider. You know, Kuga. Yeah, no way Joe Odagiri was returning. Toei also couldn't get Ichijo's actor. Like, he filmed a commercial for the Kuga manga, so I couldn't find any sources on this. I couldn't find any reasons why. It could have just been for the story because Tid does become another Kuga. I would guess it was because of more scheduling conflicts or Toei just didn't feel like it. So instead, let's pretend Kuga was busy calling Ichigo, so he couldn't make it. Now that leaves us with Ryotaro. Being in the English-speaking fandom for so long, Takeru Sato was one of the few that I've seen so many say would be impossible to bring back. He was just way too big and maybe his agency wouldn't allow it. Although, the same thing was said for Soto Fukushi and Gakusano, Forze and Gaim respectively. So, if anything, it would at least take a miracle. And it kinda was. It was a surprise for everyone, including some staff, because Ryotaro's scene wasn't written into the script in order to keep it as secret as possible. Not even Gio's writer, which also wrote for the movie, Kento Shimomiya, knew about it. If anyone's to give more praise for this, it's actually Sato himself. He requested Yasuko Kobayashi to revise the script for his part. Sato wanted to return himself, and his agency at the time was completely cool with it. Well, duh, that's why he's in the movie. The only stipulation they added was that they keep his part secret. Sato also had a lot of ideas for his reappearance, and not in a bad way either. The main reason why we see him possessed as Urataro's instead of just as Ryotaro is because he didn't want to ruin anyone's image of him. His character was very timid in Den-O, so after 10 years, his character would have changed, but you know he's more known as a more meek Ryotaro. Thanks Awkward Mango for finding the source on that. I was looking for it forever. Let's wrap all of this up. Overall, Heisei Generations Forever is okay. It has amazing moments that I'll happily watch again. I'll just skip to those moments. Oh man, I think I've talked about this movie way more than any other in this retrospective series, so let's move back to the actual show. Happy New Year! Now that it's 2022, we'll be going over Kamen Rider Geats. Wait, what? Sogo ends up in the year 2022, where it's slightly more futuristic than expected, and a person named Kaguya Rentaro transforms into Kamen Rider Shinobi. Just kidding, it was all a dream. But what isn't a dream is a new White Waz appearing from a green time machine. Waz is back. Oh yeah, he's good now by the way. And says he came across new riders that weren't written in his book. The other Waz arrives and pledges loyalty to who he calls Gates Revive, the savior of the future. But that's not all, as this Waz has his own driver.
Beyond Driver! What? Kamen Rider Boss?
Tsukiyomi explains that the timelines must have diverged, so the other Waz comes from one where Omagio never existed and Gates saved them. They're also differentiating the Wazes by calling Sogo's Waz Black Waz and Gates' Waz White Waz. Oh, I almost forgot about the Shinobi stuff. Rentaro keeps getting turned into another Shinobi by Swords until Rentaro is like, hey, knock it off, and White Waz is able to create a Shinobi ride watch for himself. It's okay, so it's not a ride watch, they're called Mirai watches. Same thing, Mirai means future. And then we do this 3 more times. Episode 19 and 20 introduce us to Kamen Rider Quiz from the year 2040. Neat. In episode 20, Sogo and Gates agree to go against White Waz and actually help out Quiz. Sogo also uses the double ride watch here. Wonder how he got that. Then White Waz gets the Quiz Mirai watch. At the end of the episode, Waz asks Sogo's uncle if he could fix a certain special watch. Naturally, in episode 21, we meet the third feature writer, Kamen Rider Ryuki. Wait, what? Wool forms a contract with their Mirror World guest character to create another Ryuga. Sogo and Gates try to fight it off but can't keep up with its powers. Tsukiyomi then explains that the day of Oma is coming soon, the day that Sogo becomes Omagio. But we can't think about that now. Team Gio look for clues of a place called Ore Journal. Sogo finds the old chief who says their company couldn't keep up with the times. The chief even brings up someone named Kido Shinji. They find him and goof around for a bit? I don't know. Gates eventually fights another Ryuga, who Wool explains is a mirror version of Shinji, so it's impossible to create powers that match. Sogo enters the fight, and then forcibly enters the mirror world, finding a mirror version of himself. Mirror Sogo talks down on our Sogo for not using the new ride watch Waz gave him. This happens throughout the episode, and I kinda like it. Having a direct counterpart as paying tribute to Ryuki makes a lot of sense in several ways, on top of Shinji giving new insight of himself, saying that maybe their mirror versions are their real selves. Their mirror versions often say what the real ones don't want to hear. Again, I really like this. Anyway, Sogo and his mirror self come to an agreement, combining their new watches and becoming one. Sogo reverses time slightly during Gates' battle, indicating he's slowly becoming as powerful as Omagio, and thankfully now, that power is shown through Kamen Rider Gio2.
Gio2! Time! Kamen Rider!
Sogo defeats another Ryuga and tells him to accept Shinji. Speaking of which, Shinji meets with the chief again, wanting to move forward, maybe even with Ore Journal again. That was a weird detour that didn't break the flow. Naturally, we have our next future writer with Kamen Rider Kikai. We start with Sogo being bad at math, same, and coming across a writer who turned out to be an android from the year 2121. Nothing important happens in these 2 episodes. Me too. Swartz forces Wool to become another Kikai, causing Ora to team up with Team Gio. Of course, White Waz gains the Kikai Mirai watch, then Wool goes back to Ora like nothing happened. At the end, Tsukuyomi explains to Gates that Sogo's powers have become so great that he was able to create brand new riders from the future. Is that really how this works? That seems incredibly odd to me. Now that they have 3 Mirai watches, White Walls forms the Gates Revive watch, and lastly, Swartz holds on to the Another Geo Ride watch. Okay, that last sentence was pretty important, but it was the end of episode 24. And now into episode 25. The day of Oma is almost here. Gates and Tsukuyomi are nowhere to be found, and Another Riders have been attacking previous hosts. The identity of this hijacker is... I have no idea. Team Geo confront the Another Rider, who introduces himself, Kakogawa Hiryu. Gates seems to know the name, and even Tsukuyomi asks about him. She talks to Sogo's uncle, who doesn't exactly remember Hiryu, but he might have been from a time that Sogo's parents were around, before they passed away. Tsukuyomi investigates further, and finds that Sogo and Hiryu both survived a bus accident when they were young. Another fight with Hiryu has him transform into another Geo. Swartz calls him the King of Dark Riders. As you can see with all this building up, there's a lot surrounding Sogo, especially with the day of Oma getting closer. We learned that Tsukuyomi messed with the timeline and was there during Sogo's bus accident, also making Hiryu upset that a lot revolved around Sogo. And yeah, I think this is the focus Sogo needed, that we needed for so long. Some time-traveling backstory that also creates one of his enemies. Which of course means episode 26 is Gates Revive's debut.
Gates Revive and
Gates is able to match Geo 2's power. But while that's happening, Wall starts to get interested in this bus accident. He reads files of people who were there, including one Mr. Destroyer of Worlds. Gates and Sogo have their fight, until Walls breaks him up with the scarf power that he has apparently. Walls says Gates Revive's power can be overwhelming and can even hurt Gates himself. I'm sure this consequence of using Gates Revive power is going to be used throughout the season. Sadly, that was sarcasm. For now, Gates is only seeing revenge after witnessing Tsukuyomi become a casualty of the bus accident. Walls also has a book cage power thing, apparently. Meanwhile with Sogo, we learn that his uncle has been going through some emotional issues. He's been meaning to reprimand Sogo, but couldn't bring himself to do it after Sogo lost his parents. Now his uncle is going to come out and say it. Gates and Tsukuyomi are gone, so Sogo should stop saying he's okay being lonely when he's really not. If he isn't true to his feelings, then he'll be a leader with no empathy for his people. After this, we learn about the day of the bus crash, which Swartz says is the day he met Tsukuyomi. April 24th, 2009. Sogo, his parents, Hiryu, his parents, Tsukuyomi, and Tsukasa were all on that bus when Swartz stopped time in front of it. Every boy born in the year 2000 on that bus had the potential to be a future king, so Swartz put them through this life or death situation, one that not even Tsukasa knew about. Tsukuyomi tries to stop him, but the bus crash happens, and Tsukasa saves the both of them at the last second. Back in 2019, Hiryu and Wool take away White Walls' power, inadvertently bestowing it upon Black Walls, who uses it to stop Gates.
What?
Would have been nice to get a different color scheme here. Episode 28. In 2009, Sogo attempts to save the other people on the bus, revealing he has the power to become the Demon King. Swartz erases Sogo's memories. All this gets explained to Tsukuyomi by Tsukasa, who is only here to decide if this world is worth destroying. Then Sogo gets beat up by all the Another Riders. Hey, they actually look pretty cool in the lineup. Sogo is late with his confrontation with Gates. They share a moment, understanding what must be done. Hiryu also makes it to their face-to-face, when Gates says he himself is the only one that can fight the kind Sogo. Besides, he's Gates' friend. Our heroes go all out to fight the Another Riders, and finally Hiryu. Hiryu blames Sogo for ruining his life and killing his parents. Sogo apologizes and can only offer his condolences. Sogo and Gates prepare for their fight, when Sogo asks if Gates can come back home with his uncle. Tsukuyomi is here too, and it turns out Black Walls is renting their old room. White Walls and Swartz plan their next move, and then... Looks like we're back to the status quo, as White Walls is given the another Blade Ride Watch. Ooh, okay. Which uses to turn Amane into the monster of the week. Amane was a main character in Blade. I'm only saying that because I know only like 4 of you watched that. We're also shown a man in the cabin. This is Hajime, who Amane looked up to. On the bright side, Sogo graduated high school. Yay. On the downside, a strange man has stolen their ride watches. This is Daiki Kaito, Kamen Rider The End.
Kamen Rider.
He's here to take everyone's treasures and throw a wrench in Sogo, Gates, and Waz's supposed friendship. Tsukiyomi, as she has been doing a lot recently, explains to Sogo that Waz was part of the resistance group in the future, but betrayed them to side with Omagio, which is why they're so opposed to each other. Sogo has another battle against another Blade when Hajime arrives. He wants to stop Sogo from hurting Amane, so he transforms into Kamen Rider Chalice. But one more surprise returns. With Hajime's powers reawakened, Kenzaki returns to begin their fated duel. It's a super long story, which you can watch in History of Blade, but if these two finish their fight, then the world will end. Meanwhile, with Gates and Waz, they're fighting The End. Fun. I just said that. This was part of White Waz's plan to force Gates to become their savior, so Team Gio think of ways to stop Hajime and Kenzaki from fighting, meaning trying to save Amane. The Kamen Riders group up, and... What? What? So with the power of this new ride watch, our 3 main riders defeat another Blade. As Kenzaki says, now they can move on. Huh. White Waz also mentions that this was supposed to be the day of Oma, and now that a new future has been made, White Waz ceases to exist. With that, Omagio tells Sogo that there are only a few ride watches left to collect in order to become king. This was Arc 2, titled Trinity Time, Servant, Demon King, and Savior. The second quarter of Heisei Rider often goes deeper into what was set as a baseline in the first quarter. Gio's second arc, how can I put this lightly? I absolutely love a lot of Gio's ideas, and you might expect me to dislike the execution, but I actually enjoyed the flow of the story, until we hit certain points. Honestly, I don't care much about the future writer stuff. The people behind the writers are neat, and Quiz's character is my favorite, though the episodes don't really move much along. And even then, I at least like what Team Gio do to save the day. I understand what the Time Jackers are doing now for their plan, and the mysteries behind White Waz keeps me invested. Until we hit a brick wall with the Ryuki arc. In a vacuum, the Ryuki tribute isn't bad and would fit perfectly with Gio's first arc. But this isn't the first arc, so dropping this in the middle feels really bad. Plus, Gio 2's debut here feels even worse, and whatever, it's just 2 episodes. We continue on with Kikai, and then we hit another wall post-Gates Revive. I loved how early Revive was foreshadowed. This was Gates' big chance to fight back for a better future, and it turns out to be kinda nothing when the conflict is resolved with a simple BL moment. Then we get some more Sogo backstory, which is great, I loved it. But it immediately follows into the Day of Oma, mixed in with another Ride Watch debut, along with being a Blade tribute, and it just becomes way too much, even with it being a 2-parter. That's how I've been feeling this whole arc. I'm so mixed with how unfocused the show is, and yes, there's a lot of logistical reasons behind the scenes of why that is. But this is still the end product we got. Man, the scene of Gates defending Sogo from Hiryu was fantastic. I'd even go as far as saying it's one of my favorite Rider scenes, period. But I really didn't enjoy how dragged out the "we're not friends" trope went with our main trio. I loved how so much got tied together with Sogo's story, piece by piece from his friends, and the scene with his uncle was so powerful. But we also have to throw in the Future Riders, a Ryuki tribute, a Blade tribute. Oh yeah, the Blade tribute. The tribute for Blade. Blade's tribute. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this. I always say Kamen Rider Blade has the best ending to a show I've ever seen. The drama, the storytelling, the character sacrifice. Hajime and Kenzaki forced to never meet again or else the world ends. That ending. And now we reach the point where I can finally talk about how Gio handled it. It's whatever. Guys, I'm a young old man. I can't keep dwelling on kid shows like this. I didn't enjoy the Blade tribute overall. That's really all I can say. Hajime, Kenzaki, and Amane got a happy ending. Good for them. And that goes for my thoughts on Gio so far. Yes, there's a lot I don't like, but who am I to validate anyone's supposed hatred for the show, especially when there's still a lot to enjoy? If I'm saying it this early, then you know I'm saving up for something in a later arc. Let's go back a little bit. Even if I didn't care much for the overall future writer plot, I do like them as characters. Mondo has a great story and is played by the same actor as Redbuster. His driver is also the first time we got a female voice for the main jingle. I also think it's funny the future writers are all variants of the Jiku driver, showing that Sogo might not be all that creative. As a production note, all the suits are kit batches from previous writers, such as Quiz's being a recolored ride player suit from Xaid with a ghost helmet, and Kikai's is from a build Guardian. His actor also plays Zamigo from Lupin Ranger vs. Pad Ranger? I can never escape that stinky show. You could probably guess that this was done due to budget restraints, but also because these suits and motifs were very unlikely to ever be used as main writers. That might disappoint a lot of you to hear that we probably won't ever be getting a quiz-themed season. But even more disappointing is there might not be a ninja theme. Kamen Rider Shinobi, a kit batch from several X8 and Ghost suits, was also played by the actor who was Star Ninja from Ninja. His entrance and aura, immaculate. This guy deserves his own show. In fact, the year is 2022. The government issues the Ninja Nation Act for everyone to use ninja powers, but this was a plan by the Rainbow Serpent clan, and the only one who can stop him is Kagura Rentaro, Kamen Rider Shinobi. This is Rider Time, Kamen Rider Shinobi. We're introduced to Rentaro and his sister, Iroha, who wants to become an elite ninja, and she's a princess. She enters a tournament where we also meet Ichi, Rentaro's childhood friend. When weird things start to happen to Iroha, it's up to Rentaro to find out the cause, and also find out who is the mysterious Kamen Rider Hatari. You might immediately think that this miniseries was made due to Shinobi's popularity, but it was in production alongside Gio's first arc. One of the producers said this was created over the other future writers because they knew ninjas were a popular themed request, so they'd at least film something small. Funnily enough, the original story was going to be similar to Gio, where Rentaro was a college student in a non-ninja world, but Shirokura said they had free reins to do what they want. As for me, I really like this. For one, it's only 3 episodes, 15 minutes long each, so it was an easy watch. In no way does it feel like this is a true first episode of a writer's show alongside from quick exposition, and I do prefer the feel that this could be somewhere near the end of a first quarter. Second, it also seems as if extra work was put into a side project. It looks similar to a real writer show outside the kit bash suits, and the effects are on par with everything else. And I really like Rentaro. He's such a serious cinnamon roll, my favorite kind of character. I don't have major negatives to bring up, except Iroha being into Shinobi despite not knowing it's her brother. It's a little weird. Otherwise, my biggest compliment goes to the soundtrack. It's so good. It's definitely up there as one of my favorite OSTs. The theme song, Izanagi, is great, but the soundtrack itself has some even better music. Despite all my praises, I'm glad we got a miniseries rather than a full-on 50-episode season. I don't know, ninjas don't exactly appeal to me, but hey, Fruits is a weird motif and Gaim turned out to be a masterpiece, so if we do end up with a ninja series, then I'm all up for it. And I would be remiss if I didn't also bring up this fan project, Kamen Rider Shinobi 2022 by CyberLife8592. When I asked on Twitter about Toku fan projects, this one was mentioned quite a bit. It's a what if Shinobi got a full season, plus extras. I personally had a good time reading. Link in the description. Scott the Waz, he's a famous gaming YouTuber. If he could be in this video. I asked him like a year ago. He hasn't responded, so I guess I'm doing the intro.